This podcast is brought to you by Dragon Shield. Use the affiliate link down below for 5% off to help support the show.
Welcome to the Play to Win podcast, where we talk about winning in cEDH. I'm Cam.
And I'm Dylan. This week, we're talking about MagicCon Chicago. We just got back. We got off the plane probably like 12 hours ago at this point. It was an awesome experience. We're going to give you the play-by-play, the behind-the-scenes, everything that happened from our point of view, and how overall the MagicCon went.
But before we get into anything, make sure that you check us out on Patreon to help support us directly.
Which is especially important right now because I'm officially full-time.
Yeah, this is huge.
We got there. Cam's been full-time for a year. I have been part-time at my day job for the past 2 months now. And going to Chicago was, for me, kind of like a quietly... an anniversary / beginning of me going full-time with Play to Win. So we're going to be both focusing on this full-time from now on, and I'm super pumped. But we really need your help from Patreon, if you can, no big deal. But
yeah,
if you can,
exactly.
If you like the show.
But welcome to the full-time crew, Dylan, and super excited to have you on board.
I'm very excited. This is a long time coming. It's so funny because like 4 years ago or something, we went to not MagicCon, it was
a Command Fest. Yeah, Command Fest Chicago 2019.
Yeah, and this was when Cameron and I were like just barely getting to know each other. We were just going on like a vacation with our significant others, and we were like, hell yeah, let's go to the MagicCon, or what was it, Command Fest, whatever.
Fest, yeah.
And it's so funny that like now, full circle, all this years later, that like we're back in Chicago for the first time since then, and we're both full-time making Magic stuff now, which is super cool.
Yeah, it's hilarious the progression that time has taken here, yeah.
Yeah, but MagicCon, we'll start from the beginning.
Let's get right in. So we flew out on Thursday evening to get out there.
We flew out from our local airport right into Chicago. Flight was great. Little tiny airport, little tiny plane.
Airplane too.
Yeah, little tiny plane.
We got him pretty late on Thursday. It was already the evening time, so we were pretty hungry. Basically, all we did Thursday was get in, get food, and then get out.
Yeah, that's all we did. A lot of the times, we are not the party people at these conventions. We are in bed by like 10:30 a lot of the time.
Yeah, but I'm here to play Magic and connect with the community. I guess that's what we should say. Like, our goals for the event were to be able to play as much Magic as we possibly can, get to meet as many people in the area as we could, and just really connect with the community on the most personal level as we can.
Yeah, so starting Friday morning, that was the official start of the whole MagicCon, at least for us. We did have creator passes, so our experience was slightly different than others. The creator passes was free, but that's all that we got for free. We still had to pay for our plane tickets and Ubers, and very expensive Ubers, and all of our food and stuff like that.
So it's not to the level of like the Black Lotus badge, where like you get to the Black Lotus Lounge and they give you all kinds of things.
Yeah, we weren't able to get in early or skip any lines or do any of that stuff.
No, we basically just had access to the command zone and to the big event. We get like a couple packs that come along with it too. Basically, they gave us a premium weekend badge to come out.
Yeah, which we are obviously super grateful for, and it was awesome. But just as a heads up, like our experience is a little bit different from everyone's. But from my point of view, the weekend overall, we can go into details more in a second, but it was awesome, dude. We saw so many people. Everyone was super nice. Everyone was super friendly and happy to see us. And it was awesome to grab some pictures with everyone and play as many Commander games as possible. We played 16 games of Commander from Saturday and Sunday. And it was so cool meeting everyone, seeing everyone's special events, seeing all the other content creators doing all these awesome things on stage and stuff like that. Overall, the event was awesome. There were some negatives.
Couple of hiccups, I would say. Hiccup is a strong word, even though.
I think the big issue that I had overall, and a lot of people had, was just like the space. There was like 12,000 people there or something every single day, and the command zone ran out of tables pretty quickly. You could buy a table, like reserve a table or something. I don't know how that works. I didn't really look into that, but there were some
on-demand tables you were talking about. Yeah, they're like pre-scheduled games that people were having, so they kind of needed to reserve space for that, which just led there to not really be a lot of space. I mean, in past, we've seen at like MagicCon Philly and MagicCon Vegas where there's plenty of space for people to play, and I don't know if they just thought, oh, maybe we don't need so many tables, but they had, weirdly this time, they had labeled the tables in the command zone to match how people wanted to play. So there were casual flags. There were flags that said challenging, which I first thought was, have we been getting the C and cEDH wrong this whole time?
Yeah.
But then we walked a little bit farther and we saw the competitive tables, and there was like one row of 6 of them.
Yeah.
Which really was a huge underestimation.
Yeah, for how many cEDH players were there, because it felt like there was a ton of cEDH players. And
definitely.
They did open up more tables kind of like outside of the convention a little bit, but that feels kind of lame when like all of the hubbub is in one spot and then like there's a whole bunch of tables kind of like in front of it a little bit,
which is
it
right
didn't feel
next,
connected.
It was right next to where the Pro Tour was going on too, which I think is also a little bit disconnecting because the pros are trying to focus on what they're doing, and then they have a bunch of loud casual Magic players just screaming their heads off because Apex Devastator got cast or something, right?
Right.
Like, so I think there's the whole dichotomy of it just feels off.
Yeah, I saw that was another complaint that I saw for some of the players that were playing in the competitive events, even not even the Pro Tour, but just like the 2Ks, the 5Ks, the whatever, all those like kind of smaller modern legacy pioneer tournaments for real money. Those were directly next to the command zone stage. I guess it's not the command zone stage, but just like the
event stage.
The event
like this
stage?
is where they did things like Family Feud. They did the cosplay contest there throughout the weekend. They had a Game Nights Live, which I think is probably... Oh, don't say that sentence, Cameron. I was going to say is the culprit, but I don't want to say that.
It's not the culprit, but it was super exciting. It's an awesome live show. We could hear it from diagonally the other side of the entire venue. It was enormous.
So hype.
Yeah,
like, it is one of the coolest things that happen at this con, which is why I didn't want to say, like, it's the culprit. Like it's so awesome, and I can understand that if my concentration is elsewhere and I'm trying to win $2,000, I don't necessarily want all of these, random shoutings to be in the background.
Exactly. Especially if you have any type of sensory issues. I saw a couple of people saying that it was kind of overwhelming, the noise at some point, which I totally get, which kind of stinks. I think in the future, if you could like schedule those things at different time, like the tournaments for money and like the big onstage events, but they're all going on all the time. So there's no there's no time to go back and forth because it's all happening at once.
The space thing is very weird because it's not like Chicago didn't have space for what we needed. Like, this convention center is 5 blocks and we could get there from our hotel without leaving the hotel.
Yeah, it was enormous, the entire place. Now, we only had like one section of it, but I wonder if they could have just like rented another section of it or something.
There's times where the Pro Tour's on a completely different floor than what everything else is going on. So again, I don't think the issue was Chicago couldn't hold us. I think the issue was they just didn't plan on this being such a huge event, even though they sold the tickets for it.
They sold out, so I feel like maybe they should have.
Yeah, you think you could foreshadow a couple things. But.
Yeah, I think those were mainly like the main issues, though. Just like there was too many people and there was lack of space. I saw some people complaining about like very long lines for the artist aisle, which is a bummer, but I don't know that there's much you can do about that.
To me, that's a really good thing. If the artists have a super long line, that's two good reasons. Number one is that artist is iconic and awesome, and that's great. We should be supporting them. But number two, like, the art direction for Magic is a super important thing, and to see the amount of crazy support that people have for these artists is so awesome. There were talks for years about Magic artists not getting compensated correctly, so like having these be a way that they can help recuperate some of the financial things that they need to live is great. And I want to see zigzaggy queues for all of these artists. So I do love to see that.
I feel like that's kind of what set Magic apart from a lot of other things, because we're not just a game, we're also arts. We're also, you know what I mean? It's very multifaceted. So even for the people who aren't grinding, even the people who don't necessarily love playing Magic with strangers or whatever, you can still spend all your time in the artist alley. We spent our entire Sunday, which was a little bit shorter than the other days.
A couple hours, really.
Yeah, but we spent several hours, at least for me too, and you were getting tokens. I was getting a couple things signed by artists, just like wandering around the artist alley. I thought that was a blast. That was super fun.
I thought the artist alley was great over there too. Yeah, I picked up 15 Dan Prescott. That's his name?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay, yeah. I picked up 15 of his tokens. I'm throwing up a couple of them in post here. I'm very excited about them. My secondary goal of the weekend was to find a Fable of the Mirror Breaker token that was less than what the actual printing of the card is going for.
Which is an $8 token.
I bought 4 Fable of the Mirror Breaker tokens for the price of 1 actual token.
That's
so I feel great. Yeah, that was great. We got a little bit out of order because now we're kind of talking about our Sunday instead.
Let's go back to Friday.
Yeah, let's fire back to Friday. So we played 8 games of cEDH on Friday.
Yeah, and normally what we try to do when we go to these conventions is find a table in the command zone, plant there, and stay for at least 4 games in a row before we go get some lunch, and that's what we did this time. We had an awesome time. I played a track set, literally all 8 games on Friday, all 8 games on Saturday, and had a blast with the deck.
Can we talk about your Friday run real quick?
Yes.
We're not touching Saturday. I only want to talk about Friday real quick.
Friday, I did fantastic with the track set. Now, it's not a tournament. We were just playing with whoever wanted to come and play up.
But we're still keeping track because we're competitive.
Because I'm competitive and I keep track of all the stats. I went 6-2 with the tracks on the day, which was an awesome showing for me. I did not like a track set in its previous iteration, the first run through that I was making, but this new version that I've been playing has been incredible. Now, I will say, I drew Mystic Remora a lot that day. That is for sure. And Delighted Halfling is really helpful when you want to jam a 7-mana commander and don't want to waste your turn getting countered. And I had both of those cards a lot. I also went first a decent amount. I got lucky for sure, but the deck really, I just felt unstoppable.
Can we talk about the differences between the list you played this weekend versus the original list that we've previously historically been commenting on?
The main difference was more clones. I'm playing obviously just like Flesh Duplicate, just recently came out, so that was an addition. Also, I think the metagame has slowed down a touch since the addition of the One Ring and Kinnan getting a lot more popularity in the last like 3 to 4 months, I would say. Atraxa thrives a little bit better in that meta. When there's 3 ad nauseum decks at the table, Atraxa is going to have a little bit of a hard time. But if there's one Stax and one mid-range deck and one turbo deck and me, I feel really comfortable in that pod, because if I can get to turn 3, normally I was casting Atraxa probably around turn
early.
3.
Yeah, I was consistently surprised at how much mana you were able to present. Yeah,
and I did mulligan kind of aggressively. There was a couple 6s and 5s that I kept that I felt really strong on, just because if you can find enough mana to get to 7 by turn 3, Atraxa is insane. You don't really quite realize how much no one can attack you anymore, for sure.
Yeah.
Immediately, you also have a 3-turn clock on whoever you want, which 3 turns isn't a ton, but it's enough to kill someone, and you're going to make them play very differently, which is going to also help you.
In a slow meta right now, 3 turns is also not a lot of turns.
And Displacerkin is insane.
That was the scariest card you cast all weekend. Every time it hit the stack, I hated it.
If you can get Displacerkin and Atraxa at the same time, every mana rock is another Atraxa activation. Or not an activation, but it attracts a trigger. Every counterspell, if someone's like, oh, I got to get rid of the Displacerkin, Force of Will, Flicker Atraxa. Here's 6 more cards that go into my hand. One of them's a counterspell.
I know. We would like try to stop your initial blinking of Atraxa, but by the time you reacted to it, you got that blink anyway.
Yeah, it's
so
fine.
We were never really able to stop it. All we did was just discard a card effectively.
Exactly. And towards the end, I know I won 5 games in a row on Saturday, which that's not who I am. I don't do that often. And by the 5th game, it literally felt like I could not lose with the deck. No matter what I did, I was making misplays and still winning over top of that, which I think just goes to show how powerful the deck is.
It was very funny because on my end then, no matter what I did, I couldn't beat this thing.
I know there was one time in specific where I had like a counterspell for you countered back, and I also had Veil of Summer, and you were just like, you just have it all.
You just have it all. That one game, I think it might have been like one of the last games that we played that was just like...
It was hilarious because I had like Mystic Remora, counterspell for your thing, Veil of Summer to protect. Like, I just happened to have it all.
Veil of Summer was also very good this weekend.
I know, we just posted a video that's like, do we even need green in cEDH? And like, all the green spells felt so good in Atraxa all day. Right? Eldritch Evolution is awesome. Veil of Summer is awesome.
There's not a lot of really great green spells that you want right now, but between like Delighted Halfling that we talked about and those other ones you mentioned, like, there's a lot of really good impactful shit.
Even stuff like Abrupt Decay felt insane. I would have someone draw a whole big chunk and they really felt that they had it, and Abrupt Decay was like the perfect answer because they had 20 cards in their hand and nothing they can do about it, which felt great. Culling Ritual, not Culling the Weak.
Correct. Yeah,
Culling Ritual also felt kind of nutty. You can do a lot with that extra mana with Atraxa because you can help cast Atraxa, and getting rid of all the 2-drops, like slowing your opponents down for just a couple extra turns. That's all you need in the deck, really.
Yeah.
The issue that I did have, there wasn't a situation where I Vampiric Tutored, you Opposition Agent me, you took my Thassa's Oracle. My Finale of Devastation was already exiled. There's no other win conditions in the deck. I looked and looked and looked, and I couldn't find one. I was able to get to a point where I food chained, drew my whole deck, and then realized, oh, shit, wait a minute. I even had a Mnemonic Betrayal active at the time.
Yeah.
But there was no way, and maybe I should have just thought a little bit differently. There was a moment that I could have mana drained You're the One Ring like 4 turns earlier, and I didn't. Maybe that would have stopped you from being able to yada, yada, yada.
Because that did get me a lot of cards in the long run then, too, especially 4 turns later.
Yeah, so there were situations where, like, I lost the game here, but had I been more familiar with the deck and how the deck should have played and reacted a little bit differently 4 turns ago, I think I would have been in a better spot. And that just comes with like learning a deck, I think.
Yeah. Now I have 2 follow-up questions to this specific situation.
Give it to me.
How would Finale of Devastation help you win the game when you have your whole deck in your library?
Yeah, my whole deck in my hand. So at that point,
oh yeah, thank you.
There is a situation where I had ways to make a bunch of mana with like mana rocks and Culling the Ritual and things like that. Had I been able to play all my creatures from my hand with the food chain mana, and then with the rocks, Finale of Devastation to make them big, that was a way that I felt that I could have actually gotten through.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean?
See, yeah.
Like, it's not clean, it's not perfect, it's not infinite because Food Chain doesn't help you cast the finale. But by the time I have the whole deck, I should be able to compile like enough mana. I know I didn't do the math, and maybe I'm wrong, and I wouldn't have been able to.
Because it's tough, because you only get the actual power toughness bump of finale if finale is 10 or more. So you need 12 mana, which is like every single mana rock in your deck plus Dark Ritual.
Culling Ritual is the thought
That's
that
the
I
way
had.
that would have had to get
If I can
up there,
sequence in so that I can Culling Ritual first and then play 3s and like some creatures after that and then finale for a big after that, that's like my theoretical.
That's how you do that, yeah.
I mean, that at least was a line, and with having finale exiled, that was no longer a line.
Good point. Okay.
So if I had one thing to change, maybe it was that. But we played 16 games and that came up once time.
Yeah.
Is that really worth jamming a Praetor's Grasp in the deck? I don't know. Part of me thinks that, like, is that the casual in me, that I just want an answer for everything? I want a backup for everything. But maybe that's not necessary. Competitive decks, oftentimes, you're just going to say, if you get rid of the Thoracle, I lose that game, I guess. You know what I mean? I'm just going to lose that one and then be really good in all my other games. It's hard to know.
It is hard to say, because technically you do run other win conditions. Like in that same scenario, a lot of times Mnemonic Betrayal can get you out of that problem, right? So it's not like Thoracle's technically your only way to win. The other thing is that I know we talked about Emil and Cloud of Fairies not being in your list, but being another way that these lists will make infinite mana, because you can have Cloud of Fairies untap Gaia's Cradle and then have Emil blank the Cloud of Fairies, so you can keep making infinite mana this way, and then turn that into something else too, right?
Eventually, you can flick your Orcish Bowmaster 1,000 times.
That's what that is, and then
mana.
you don't need like an actual draw card outlet or Finale of Devastation.
Yeah.
Has that entered? You like, is that something that you're thinking about playing again now?
The issue is, if I do that, then I gotta play Cloud of Fairies, which is not really a great card.
Cloud of Fairies is a bad card. Cloud of Fairies is 100% a bad card that you're playing because it's just an outlet in your deck.
I will say it's helpful in Food Chain wins. There are times where I want to use the Food Chain creature mana to untap some land so that I can hold up mana for other spells or something like that.
Okay,
it can cycle away just for 2 to draw a card, so it's not always dead, but I agree, it's not a good card, right?
Yeah.
And then Emil also, while Emil is fucking insane with Atraxas, because holy hell, just 3 mana to blink Atraxas every time. That's nuts. It's a little mana intensive, and right now I'm playing Talion instead as my second 4-drop.
Okay.
I know Displacer Kitten is not coming out, because Displacer Kitten with Teferi and a Mana Rock is also a win. Now, it's not really a win because it's just a draw your deck. So
it
without
sets
the Thoracle,
you up for a win, yeah.
right? Which is what I also had the opportunity to do that when we were going the thing without the Thoracle, but without the Thoracle, there's still no way to finish.
Your whole deck was in your hand too because of
so I can't draw any more cards, right?
Yeah.
So I have thought about the Emil. The issue with the Emil is mana intensive. 4 mana, and then you also have to have the 3 mana up. So that's 7 mana for Atraxa, and then another 7 mana for a second Atraxa, basically.
14 mana to draw 10 cards, technically. That's not a good cEDH
That's
rate.
not a good rate, but if I can... I don't know. There are situations where it can be good. I like the Displacer Kitten better, but the Displacer Kitten doesn't offer another clean actual end the game win. So I'm still looking. There are probably some Atraxa players in the comments right now that are screaming, "You fucking idiot, there already is another line. You just didn't see it." I'm sorry, I missed it, and I don't mean to. I'm not making fun of your voice like that. That's just how I would say it if I saw the comments. And
every single YouTube comment I read has that voice.
But I also just do want to say, although I went 6-2 with Atraxa on day 1, I did go 2-6 with Atraxa on day 2. So I was immediately humbled right away. But still,
a 50% win rate over the course of the weekend over so many games.
Food Chain wins games. It definitely had me high on the deck for sure, and I'm a lot more interested in the deck going forward. I'm afraid to tweak it, honestly, because the deck ran so well. I'm like, I don't know if I need to fuck this up by throwing in a Praetor's Grasp or something like that. Mnemonic Betrayal is a card that I personally, and I know everyone loves this card, have not been as big a fan of, and casting it this weekend and drawing them in my deck and still not being able to win kind of helped prove that for me. Small sample size, I know, and a lot of people love Mnemonic Betrayal, but too often, I don't want your guys' graveyard because that's not my cards. I can't win with that shit because it's not the right shit. And if there's good stuff in your graveyard, you probably already won the game or something.
I think that's a really good point.
You know?
Historically, everything that we complain about in a Magic card, Mnemonic Betrayal is.
Yeah.
But why do I love playing it so much, and why does it help me win games?
It's a lot. The ceiling is insanely high, like crazy high, and I do get that.
I find there are a lot of games, though, where it only does affect like 2 players. Like there's only 2 players that you're actually getting stuff that you want, and then like we had a Delny list that played against us this weekend, and I remember going like looking at it in my hand, going, "There's nothing in your graveyard I'm ever gonna want."
Yeah, it's kind of a situation where like if I am in the deep late game and I am resolving this mnemonic betrayal, that means I have like counter magic for it or something, which means I'm like already in like a good spot. So it feels a little bit win more, and then at the same time not quite enough because you can't control it.
That's what I don't like about it.
For me personally, that's my issue with it.
But for me personally, when I'm casting it, something else has gone wrong.
Yeah.
Like, it's never the first thing I'm trying to go for. I'm always trying to set up Thoracle instead. But if something happens to my setup, like it gets wheeled away or something, like I need to make sure that like some of the other stuff that got wheeled away, like your Vampiric Tutor, my opponent's Vampiric Tutor, I can use to help set up a win.
Right.
It is a very difficult card to use, and it's a card I'm always considering not playing, but the reason why I consistently leave it in is because it always is nice for me in these types of scenarios that we're talking about where your Thassa's Oracle gets exiled to have a backup win condition. And it's a backup win condition that doesn't require you to play additional cards in your deck to go with. Like, it's a 1-card win condition on its own, so you don't have to play a secondary bad combo. You don't have to play Dualcaster Mage on top of it. It's just one of your 99 that's in there.
And for that, I love it. It's still a great card. I'm probably not cutting it, but I don't know. I'm thinking about it. If I were to cut one card, for me, it'd probably be Mnemonic Betrayal.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the last cards that I add to for that reason, and it's only like if I actually need another way to win.
We also lost a lot of games this weekend, and I would love to highlight some of the decks that we lost to this weekend, if you've got a moment.
Yeah, I do. Can I talk about my record real quick this weekend before we get into this?
Well, I didn't know if you wanted to bring it up, but sure, if you're bringing it up.
I'm ready. I'm ready to talk about it now. Okay. I'm home. I've processed it.
Yeah.
My record for this weekend was 2-14.
Hell yeah, baby.
I think this is probably one of like the weakest cEDH weekends for me of my life, which is okay, which is totally okay.
Yeah, it happens.
It comes and goes.
I think I lost 10 games in a row before this weekend, truly. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes you lose 10 games and you go, I'll never win 10 games in a row, so how the fuck is this working out? And then you win a bunch of games in a row, and it does. But what was your overall experience with your decks this weekend?
So I played 3 different decks this weekend. I played Kenrith, which did okay this weekend. It does exactly how it normally does, which is you look at hands and you go, how is this going to win? And then it just somehow pieces together victories out of like card advantage engines and good cards that you end up drawing. Kenrith won 0 games this weekend, though. I did not end up playing Kenrith a lot. I probably only played Kenrith for like 4 or 5 of the games that we played, but I still really like the deck. It's still one of my favorite decks to play, so it's still going to be something I will do moving forward. Played a lot of Atali this weekend, and my list for Atali, I have yet to update with like Jaxus.
You didn't put any time walks in.
I didn't put any of the time walks in. Yeah, no. So it's very behind, but it did get a game win this weekend, and it's still a deck that I would still love to keep playing.
Atali felt so close to me every time. You like did a thing or the thing most games. It was just for some reason a little bit tricky for you to close it out. Sometimes it seemed like
that was my biggest issue this weekend.
If you throw in some of those extra clones, some of those extra things that allow you to get additional Atalis, I think that's what's going to give this deck the little step up that it needs. Because it was like right there. Yeah, it felt really close.
It definitely did. Like I felt like I just kept getting to the finish line, but something else would happen. I kept like tripping over myself, or someone has the Flusterstorm for when they need it. Like I just felt like I just kept hitting walls.
I also felt that I had lost to Italia a couple times that all for some reason, and I'm so sorry, ended up on our Chill 2 and our Patreon, so no one really saw you win a ton with that deck because a bunch of them went on the Patreon. But I think I was also a little bit prepared, and everyone kind of counts. You know, the Italia people are accounting for the Atraxa too, but when a 7-mana commander plays 7 mana on turn 1 and then just passes the turn, everyone can go, maybe I won't play this Esper Sentinel. Maybe I'll hold up this, counterspell or something instead. So I think that was happening for you.
There were games then that I was starting to experiment with sandbagging my ramp, my free ramp especially, so that I wouldn't seem like I was so close to Atali. And then someone played a turn 1 blind obedience.
and you're like, oh, fuck.
Like, why? Of course. It sucked because that hand would have been turn 2 Treasonous Ogre into a turn turn 2 Atali, but of course then, because I couldn't turn 2 Treasonous Ogre, on someone else's turn 3, they played Dranith Magistrate, which meant that I couldn't then go into Atali.
Yeah, and
I think snowballed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also I remember there was like a rule of law at some point.
There
so
was.
By the time you got the Treasonous Ogre in play, you're like, I can't even play something else. And then by the time it was the next turn, then the Dranith came in play, and you're like, I can't even play the Atali now. It was just like perfectly fuck you up specifically.
I was the only Treasonous Ogre player to never get attacked with me.
You're like, maybe it's not that big a deal.
People stopped caring. There was a Bowmaster in play, and it
Yeah.
pinged off like 3 creatures before it hit mine.
You played a third deck too.
I played a third deck. I played Rogside.
Did you take it apart yet?
No, not yet. But I remember sitting there after wheeling and drawing 4 or 5 lands, just like, after this game, I'm ripping Silas in half, because if I own a Silas, I will be tempted to put this deck together again at some point. But if I don't own a Silas, I can say fuck this.
Yeah, it did seem, and I've had a similar issue with Rockside, which is kind of strange that it plays so few lands, but if you ever, God forbid, C4 at once, your hand is dog shit.
It's the worst.
Because all your cards have to go together. You have to string together several cards together in order to get like the value you need out of the deck. So when like you only got 3 spells, you might as well have none for some reason. It's like
that's the thing.
The spells in your deck have to round up. Like if you have 5 spells in your hand, that rounds up to 7 good cards and you're good to go. But if you have like 4 or 3 spells in your hand, that rounds down to 0 and the hand's garbage.
That's the thing. Like you need a critical mass of spells to do anything and to actually feel like you're going to play in that game. I feel like the hands that you actually need for this deck to do well are 6 or 7 card hands with 1 land. And if you see any more than that, you just don't have enough of the pieces that you need, because the deck needs way too much. It needs a tutor. It needs a ton of mana, and it needs win conditions. When your deck doesn't have a way to consistently draw cards to help you continuously present win after win after win, like you need to have this stuff naturally in your hand a lot. You need to see wheels. You need to draw wheels and have those wheels draw you 1 land a time and 6 spells.
It also seems like the deck needs to mulligan a lot, which doesn't have to be a problem, but when you're going to 4 or 5 every game and you're also stringing together 4 losses in a row, that can be tricky to come back from. You know what I mean? Because you're still mulliganing to 4 was still probably right. But if you have no way in your command zone to claw out of that mulligan to 4, sometimes it's going to feel really bad. And when you mulligan to 3, do nothing all game, lose. Mulligan to 4, do nothing all game, lose. 4 or 5 times in a row, that can be hard, I think, mentally to come back to from everyone.
Yeah, I was really looking for a deck that would help me go much faster. I'm trying to attack this format in a much faster light. And I know we just built Jund Rograk on the channel. You should put that together. I feel like that's a lot more my speed. And I went blue instead of green because I'm a bit of a coward. And I thought, well, this deck is already performing very consistently. I feel like it should for me too. But there is something about the playstyle of Rogside that does not mesh with me.
Yeah.
That for some reason other Grixis decks like work better for me instead of this one. I don't really know what it is.
I think also this weekend, I think you maybe resolved a Mystic Remora / Rhystic Study 1 time out of the 16 games. I don't remember you having a bunch of them at all.
I had very little card advantage all weekend.
And you were mulliganing a bunch. It wasn't like you weren't looking for it. You just didn't happen to find it. I think that's also a big reason. Like it's so hard to correctly say how powerful Rhystic Study and Mystic Remora are. We talk about them all the time, but they truly are, in my opinion, by far the best cards in the game, especially for an Atraxa deck. I think even more so than a Rogside deck, because the Atraxa deck, even if they don't feed the fish, they're not doing stuff, which means they're slowing down, which is also what I want, because I want to get to turn 3 or 4. Whereas with you, if everyone slows down, they're holding up more counterspells ready for your ad nauseum. They're playing more creatures ready to attack you because you're the Grixis deck.
And every time that you try to win, you're the first person who's trying to win 90% of the time. So they're all ready for you, like you're saying.
Right. You can't afford to just do nothing forever, whereas I can afford to get a Delighted Halfling in play, cast an Atraxa, just do that every turn and just attack people. I can just do nothing. Kinnan can just do nothing. Timnit Krom can just do nothing. Rockside can't really just do nothing.
No, you're kind of forced to make windows out of very small wormholes.
Yeah.
You know? Like there's these things that actually, they're not supposed to be like that, but you're taking a sledgehammer to this little hole in the wall because you have to turn it into a window.
The deck is still good. We're not saying it's a bad deck.
Alana won an event this weekend with it. So like, I can't sit here and say the deck is bad. The deck is not bad. The deck is bad in my hands.
It's just not your play style.
It is not my play style. And this is why people don't just only play the best deck in the format because it works really well for certain people, but it doesn't work really well for other people. I saw this on Reddit recently, which is why I'm bringing this comment up. Yeah, people don't just play the best deck because we're playing cEDH. There's reasons why, like for playstyle reasons, for personality reasons, whatever it is, there's reasons why I'm playing Atali and having a lot more success without blue in my fast deck.
It is funny how, like, I think Blue Farm is probably one of the least played decks on our channel, at least out of the tier 1 decks.
Yeah.
Timna Crumb actually has not made an appearance on our channel a ton.
In a long time.
Yeah. And it is, even still with Kinnan, I still think Timna Crumb is probably the best deck. That was one of the decks that impressed me this weekend, as it always does, because Timna Crumb is just so good on accident. It's just like the best deck. It's always doing the best thing, but we don't play it a lot, and it's still the best deck. It just doesn't exactly fit our play styles all the time, and there's other things that we want to be doing.
Do you want to talk about some of these decks that we played against now that we're done talking about us?
Absolutely love to do that. I know we lost to Slicer, keeping it casual. We saw him right away in the beginning. We lost to Slicer.
It's nice to get an in-person game with him.
Yeah, and losing to Slicer was great. That deck is crazy and still does some things. And also, Slicer felt like very out of it. We were targeting Slicer. We were attacking different players to keep the Slicer from ending the game quickly. I eventually died to something, getting attacked, or I don't know what.
It was me and Slicer for the last bit.
Yeah.
You had died, and Dead on Board, who we were also playing with, also died to the Slicer too.
But yeah, Slicer eventually just was able to attack you to death.
Yeah, I tried really hard and I got real close, but I just couldn't get there. Slicer was just too good.
Second game of the weekend, I won with the Traxa. I played against a bunch of decks that don't matter. Third game of the weekend, you won. You did actually win our third game with Roxai.
I did win. Yeah,
you did get a win.
It was my one win with Roxai, and it was a wheels win. I had Bowmaster. I did 2 wheels to deal 41 damage and take players out with a 43-43 Orc.
Hell yeah, dude. That's fucking awesome. After that, I won 5 games in a row, playing a whole bunch of different decks. Not going to go through all of them, but the works. We played against basically all of cEDH in that point.
We saw a lot of Yuriko this weekend.
A lot of Yuriko. Yeah, Yuriko I think is a great one because it is budget friendly.
Yeah.
And it's also close to casual. You're still playing ninjas. You're still playing fun, quirky spells. You can throw a couple weird ones in there, and they feel great sometimes.
Half the time, the only real difference between the casual and the cEDH list is Thassa's Oracle and Demonic Consultation.
Yeah, exactly. Besides that, you're still playing a bunch of big drops, and I think I don't want to say it's an easy deck to understand, but if you come from 60 card and you want to attack and you want to get your small creatures in, Yuriko does that really well, and I'm happy to see it so frequently.
The playstyle is very easy to grok, too. And it's the same thing every game. You don't necessarily have to be like, oh, I have to fluctuate because only one of my 2 partner commanders is good in this state right now. Like, it's always the same. Play a evasive creature, get in for damage.
Yeah. We also lost to Timna Thrasios, Urza, and Yuriko as that was one of our losses as well. The Urza loss was pretty interesting.
The Urza loss was insane.
Yeah.
I had stolen Static Orb with my Atali, and it was actually putting in work for me.
You were in a very dominant position at that time, and I think it was the correct move at the time because everyone else was like already a little bit behind, and you were like, I don't know if you were on the play. Hold on, let me check right here. I was C1, you were C3, but you were very ahead at the time.
Yeah, I felt very ahead for most of that game. But Urza was in seat 4 and just ultimately was able to take advantage of this by having the 1 ring and then eventually being able to tutor up an Unwinding Clock.
Yes.
Which frees them up from being underneath the Static Orb. Not just that, but also means
double one ring, which is exponential 1 ring because you draw so many more cards.
Yeah, technically you're quadrupling your 1 ring.
Yeah, and then by the time it got back to their turn, they were like, all right, I have 30 cards in my hand. I'm going to go through everything. I think I even had an Abrupt Decay for something, and they were just like, all right, I'm just going to try again and do something else.
Yeah,
and
just had too many cards. Just had way too many cards.
After that, I stopped keeping track of what specifically we lost to. We lost to a decent amount, and
we lost to your Tim Natana list. Oh, the first game on Saturday. Let's move into Saturday. You all know Lua from Scribeberries, right? Yeah. So she hosted a new to cEDH event Saturday morning where people could come and borrow cEDH decks and content creators would play cEDH with them and kind of show them the ropes.
I lost a bunch of games in a row, actually. I lost with my Timna Crom, and we lost with somebody else's deck, too. I feel like I lost to a couple people on that.
Oh, yeah, we did.
Stretch.
But the very first game we played was someone's first game of cEDH.
First game of cEDH. They knew Commander, they knew Creature deck, so they took my Timna Tana list, and they piloted excellently. They piloted it excellently. That's a hard. Ooh, that's a good test in the beginning. They piloted it excellently.
They piloted it.
I don't even think that's a word, but they piloted it excellently.
Pilottedde.
That's correct. There was someone helping him out on the side saying, this is what you can go for. And
Which there should be.
Yeah, obviously in the first game.
And we were pointing out some stuff too
but they were very easily to get the birthing pod line on. They drew a bunch of cards. I still love that Tim Natana list. I didn't play it at all because all I was playing was the tracks this weekend. But the more I play that list and the less it becomes like a Stax list and more of just like a good stuff creature birthing pod deck, I like it a lot more.
That makes so much sense because Stax sucks right now.
Stax sucks right now. That was another takeaway for me for the weekend. Stack is a stinker right now.
Yeah, there were a couple other Stax decks that we did play against. Not many.
Right, not many. Yeah, that was the biggest. Also, there wasn't a lot of Stax there. Just like not a lot of people playing Stax, but
which maybe that has something to do with the fact that we're at a MagicCon.
Yeah,
like everyone's trying to play good games and fun games and like have memorable experiences. And I don't know if MagicCon people are going to be like, I don't want to experience the con. I'd rather sit here with you for 2 hours.
The issue with Stax, and we've talked about this a little, we can talk about it more, is that no Stax deck has a fast enough clock that's protected. Winota's got a fast clock, but it's pretty easy to just and win on top. And while Thassa's Oracle exists, it doesn't matter. Anyone can win out of nowhere. So like, it's just the format is not set up for Stax to be able to truly dominate.
Yeah.
People are going to be able to utilize you against the opponents, get rid of the last Stax piece that's only affecting them at the last moment. And now with things like Born Upon a Wind and so many people trying to win at instant speed, I feel like that makes it even tougher for Stax.
Not only that, but like cards like Galadriel's Dismissal also makes it so that people only care about Stax on their turn now too. So they can extra play around you by making sure that someone else just doesn't win the game now too. So you're always losing as the Stax player, and people are just finding more ways to consistently win around you now as we're getting more tools like Touch Upon the Spirit Realm.
I was just going to ask you, what's the enchantment that channels and gets rid of stuff?
Well, not the name that I said. I added like 6 words to that.
It's definitely Touch the Spirit Realm,
That's
not upon
all
it,
it is.
Yeah,
we're not touching upon it.
That card is awesome. If you can channel it in somebody else's end step, the player right before you, to get rid of the Stax piece, and on your turn you go for a win, God forbid you get stopped. I don't know where Forbidden Guide, but if you do get stopped, the Stax piece is coming back on your end step and it's going to continue affecting other people. It's also not a spell. So if you're in that Stax situation in the Rule of Law, you can channel that and then also get rid of something else in the same turn. Really helpful.
Or ad nauseum first and then do that when they think that you're totally out of it. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
There's so much more flexibility now when it comes to dealing with Stax pieces, and they haven't printed many new Stax pieces that are making up for it.
Especially with the other channel stuff, Beseiju, Adawara, these uncounterable non-spells. I shouldn't say uncounterable, but relatively uncounterable.
They're basically uncounterable,
non-spells that can get rid of stuff that aren't Rule of Law or anything like that. They're so strong against the Rule of Law decks. And there's just too many situations where, as a Stax player, I feel like I'm giving somebody else the game.
Keep in mind, they also get around like Grand Abolisher and stuff like that too. So there's a lot of great utility that they have.
Now, we were talking about this in reference to Tim Natana. I'm not saying that I want to go turbo ad nauseum Tim Natana. That's not exactly.
We're not there yet.
I don't really want to go there. I still like Birthing Pod. I still like a 1-card win condition that I can win against other Stax decks. And I don't want to feed any Ristic Studies when I go for my win. And I love being able to not feed any spells, win off of 1 spell. I think that's really good. Not feed any engines and win off of 1 spell. I think that's really good. There are still some Stax pieces, some small things in the deck. I'm still playing Archon of Emeria at the time because turn 1 Archon can really set you back. It can really set everyone back a whole ton. Maybe that gets cut eventually.
I think some of those still work out for a couple reasons. Number 1, your win conditions are built around still being able to play through them.
Yeah.
Which not other decks can do. So I think because you're still utilizing that, cards like Archon will still work out. Number 2, you are still a Timna deck, and playing cards like Archon will still be very powerful for you and help you actually create your own engine that you're looking for.
In my current build of the deck, Archon of Emeria and Drannith Magistrate are the only like Stax pieces that don't also benefit me or act as removal in some way, right? So I have things like Manglehorn, but Manglehorn is also a removal spell. So I have things like that, things like the new white spell that has the artifacts come and tap, the white creature that's a 1/4.
Dauntless Dismantler.
Dauntless Dismantler kind of acts as a Stax piece, but it's also interaction. I can pop it when I want. I can get rid of something that's stopping other players on my side of the board. I can use it just as interaction. But I like leaning more into the removal spells and the interaction and the Force of Vigors and stuff like that, as opposed to the Stax pieces, at least in Timnatana.
Yeah, I think right now that's the better way to go. Are there any other decks that stood out to us as decks that kicked our pants off?
There was one Sisay. I don't see a lot of Sisay. It's not a deck that's played a ton, but woof, did that deck destroy us. All that was out was a Sylvala, I think.
It was just the Brostorm Sylvala.
And then through a series of making just enough mana, they were able to, with casting 0 spells, win the game, which I thought was super impressive.
I was very happy that happened because now I know how all these pieces and all these Planeswalkers actually fit together in this deck. It seems so awkward because if you draw any of them, like, I have Saheeli Rai in my hand, so now, like, I have to find something else to make a new copy of Sylvala that has haste instead.
To be honest, sometimes it feels a little bit like Blood Pod to me, like an updated Blood Pod where your win does not cast a lot of spells. In fact, it casts oftentimes even less spells than Blood Pod. You get access to the blue also, but you, in exchange, have a couple dead cards in your deck. Blood Pod's got a couple dead cards in the deck. It seems like Sisay's got a couple more dead cards in the deck.
And even deader cards.
Right? But the exchange of blue and the exchange of the tutorability, finding silver bullets when you need to, feels very powerful in that deck for sure.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So it was a very impressive showing from Sisay.
We also got to hang out with Dragon Shield a little bit, and they gave us some sleeves to give out, which was really cool. So we were trying to give out as many sleeves as possible, which is a really fun extra aspect of the whole weekend. Should we talk about any like the food and stuff that we ate over the weekend?
We went out to dinner with Dragon Shield.
Yeah, that was great.
Friday.
Love going out to dinner with Dragon Shield.
Hung out with Quest for the Jank Lord. Love the new shirt, by the way.
Yeah, this is from them. Isn't this swell with our little logo on it?
It's awesome. Yeah, I got a gray one. It's very cool.
Yeah, I think yours was green, wasn't it?
I thought it was
like
gray,
like a bluish, greenish,
grayish, greenish.
Bluish, grayish, greenish. Funnily enough, I got us an Uber to go to the Chinese food place that we were going with Dragon Shield, and I didn't realize until afterwards that there are like 4 other Chinese food places with the exact same name within like 2 miles of where we were. So we went to the wrong one. It was in Chinatown, so I was like, yeah, that's probably where we're going. Got to Chinatown, no one was there, so I was like, well, fuck, I guess it's not the one in Chinatown. So we had to take another Uber somewhere else. We were having a lot of issues with like the Uber, like being
Ubers in
expensive.
general were a nightmare.
Yeah.
And this is something that I heard from a lot of people, that just Ubers were getting canceled left and right. People just weren't able to get them. They were all mad expensive the whole time. And of course, the convention center is not close to anything else that you want to do in Chicago.
Technically, it was like 15 minutes outside of Chicago, sort of. Like we saw Chicago, the buildings were like right there, but it wasn't like in Chicago exactly. We still had to take an Uber to get there.
Yeah, exactly. Like it still has a Chicago address, but
yeah, it's just right on the outside.
Yeah, it's a 40-minute walk to anything that you might want to do. Yeah. But we had some really good food with them. We got to meet MTG Remy. He was at dinner with us as well.
Super nice.
What a great time that was.
Yeah.
And then we did the Chicago Diner,
which is a vegan diner in Chicago, which was for me, and thank you for going to me, because that's one of my favorite places to go in all of Chicago. It is so incredibly good.
Dude, it was so good. I had a stir fry that was delicious.
I had a vegan gyro, vegan mac and cheese. What was the poutine? The fries.
Oh, we got poutine. Yeah, that was really good too.
Really, really good. That was a better call. On day Friday, we played for like 4 hours, and then we got like convention food. You got chicken tenders, I got French fries.
And they were shit.
And we played another 2 hours until like 6, went dinner at 6, and then by the time we were done with dinner, it was already like 10 o'clock, so we never ended up going back. But day 2, I like what we did a little bit better. We played from like 10 till 2, then we got lunch from like 2 to 4.
Big lunch,
big, nice, good lunch, not just fries. We went to the Chicago Diner. And then we came back from like 6 till 9 or 10 or something like that.
We basically played until I was ready to pass out and needed more food.
Exactly. And I like that system a little bit better.
Me too.
Leaving at 6 kind of felt like we left a lot on the table. You know, there's still so much going on. Leaving at 9, everyone else is also kind of wrapping up. So that felt a little bit better.
Yeah, I kind of felt a lot more a part of everything that way too.
Yeah.
So I definitely will want to do that more going forward. Focus more on lunch and then do like a way late dinner.
And then after that, we found some like bar restaurant that had an Impossible Burger for me, and it had like mac and cheese and shit, and also like a whole bunch of good sandwiches on Saturday night.
It was so good good that we went there Sunday for lunch then.
Yeah, exactly. Normally by Sunday, we'll never find somewhere new to eat by Sunday. We just pick a place that we liked so far that we ate on Friday and Saturday and just go back to that place.
The other bit of criteria for Sunday is that it had to be a close place that we liked as well. I was not getting in another Uber to go somewhere else.
And on Sunday, we kind of spent the day doing the con stuff. You know, Friday, Saturday, we played Magic with as many people as possible. That was our main goal. But by Sunday, little pooped on playing so many Magic games in a row. So we walked through the artist alley. We were there from like 10:30 to like 2 or so, just like roaming around, picking up some cards. And then we got the food before we left.
A couple of other things to note that we did or did not do, I should say. We didn't really get to do a lot of like the panels or anything like that. We did get to check out a little bit of the cosplay contest. We got to see the second place winner and her costume as well. She was Chandra in killer cosplay, which I thought was just super clever. You get 2 Magic cards in one cosplay. That's pretty cool.
We were also given like a ton of tokens and stickers and all sorts of stuff from everyone, which was awesome to have. We'll maybe show them on screen with the credits and stuff like that. But that was super cool. I love getting all that stuff and all the community stuff. Meeting so many people, for me, that's like the number one
best
highlight.
Part. Yeah,
it's
100%.
just like getting to meet like wonderful people who dig the show, people who dig cEDH, people who just like Magic, just want to come up and say hi. That's like the most fun thing ever for me.
The best feeling is people coming up and saying, "You guys got me into cEDH."
Oh, God,
and when you are
melt.
getting punched with that sentence, left, right, left, like all afternoon, it just feels so good.
I also wanted to a couple shout outs of things that you wonderful people asked us to write on cards. Wrote D's nuts on the goblin that whatever.
The blank goblin,
the blank goblin. Wrote food chain wins games on a food chain, a foil food chain, which was fucking awesome.
That was sweet, yeah.
Signed a Mox Diamond, which was really cool.
Multiple people had us
the time
write time walk on top of surveillance.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah,
that
time
was
walk
a big highlight.
Yeah, just that was another shout out for me. We're super grateful for the opportunity, but yeah, it was just overall fantastic, and we're definitely looking to obviously do a lot more conventions.
Yeah, definitely. So I don't think we'll be at Amsterdam this year, but we're already looking into the possibility of Vegas.
Yeah.
The only other American one for this year, so we'll see what happens with that.
Thanks so much for watching. If you'd like to support us directly, you can do so on Patreon, which means an extra lot right now because of the full-time thing. So thank you so much if you enjoy the content. Yeah, this huge shout out to our $100 patrons.
Koja Alex, Sean in the Ice, Mark Cirillo, she doesn't even go here, SoCal Acura, Stormageddon, Luke Cook, AJ Alwasabi, Demon of Rosgrees, Peter Stewart, Uncle Butch, Kawaja A. Hamid, Lauren Connell, and Baby G-Bus.
If you want to pick up any of our merch, you can do that at playtowinmtg.com.
Thank you so much to Dragon Shield for supporting the show. Make sure you use our affiliate link down below and PlayToWin5 as the promo code to get 5% off your order.
You can follow us on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram for more content.
Thank you so much for watching.
See you next time. Or listening.
Tyler Watson, Brian Barrington, Zachary Colson, Tyler H, Alex Tyler the Tree Aft, Malcraft, Driving Critter, Jabaha, Mace the Ace, Dalton Poteet, Kadanis, Hobo Ghost, Mitchell Shepard, Justin, Man Solo, Pedro, Jacob Depp, Michael Blue, Jan Wildfang, Thomas Bueno, and David Nelson.
Bye-bye.
So long.
Or listening.